911 dispatcher. 911. What is your emergency? He's been stabbed. There's so much blood. Please, he's not breathing. It began with a forbidden love story. A wealthy father, a defiant son, and a young woman struggling to make ends meet. But when jealousy and pride collided one rainy night in Orlando, what followed was a shocking act of violence, and a twist no one could have predicted. Welcome to True Crime Unraveled. We dive into the stories that shake us to the core. Real-life mysteries, chilling disappearances, unforgettable crimes. This is a story of how a disowned son, a poor girl with a mysterious past, and a shattered family became the center of one of Florida's most bizarre attempted murder cases. The year was 2019. In the upscale Baldwin Park neighborhood of Orlando, Florida, the Romano family was well known and respected. Leonard Romano, a 58-year-old retired investment banker, had built an empire through savvy real estate deals and old money connections. He was a strict father, a perfectionist, and the type of man who believed that status meant everything. His only son, 24-year-old Jason Romano, was expected to follow in his footsteps. Jason had graduated from a top private university with a degree in business management, all according to Leonard's plan. But Jason had other ideas. He wanted to be a musician, and in the fall of 2018, he met someone who changed his world, Maria Vasquez. Maria, a 22-year-old nursing student from a working-class background, was everything Leonard disapproved of. She worked 2 jobs, cared for her younger siblings, and had never seen the inside of a country club. Her father had passed away when she was 16, and her mother was battling lupus. Maria's life was built on hard choices and personal sacrifice. But to Jason, she was kind, grounded, and genuine, something money couldn't buy. They met at a small open mic night in downtown Orlando. Jason was performing, and Maria was working the register. They struck up a conversation after his set. Their connection was instant, and by winter, they were inseparable. When Leonard discovered the relationship, he issued an ultimatum: end it or you're out. Jason chose Maria. Cut off from his family fortune, Jason moved into a tiny apartment with Maria and started playing gigs to make ends meet. It was difficult, but he was happy. For the first time in his life, he was making choices for himself. But Leonard wasn't finished. Then came the veiled threats. Strange texts, unfamiliar cars parked outside their apartment. Jason felt watched. Maria noticed too. Their apartment was broken into one night, but nothing was stolen, just drawers ransacked and photographs torn. They filed a police report, but nothing came of it. It was the night of July 17, 2019. Rain had been falling steadily for hours. Jason and Maria were walking home from a nearby music bar where Jason had played a small gig. It was just after midnight, and the streets were empty. A black SUV slowly pulled up behind them. Its headlights dimmed and then flashed. Jason turned, confused. The next moments were chaos. A masked man jumped out and lunged at Jason, plunging a blade into his side. Jason staggered, blood pouring from the wound. Maria screamed and threw herself at the attacker, scratching and kicking with everything she had. In the struggle, she managed to rip off part of the man's ski mask. He ran. "Stay with me. Jason, please. Don't close your eyes," she sobbed, pressing a torn t-shirt to his wound. Jason was unconscious by the time paramedics arrived. He was rushed into emergency surgery. The knife had missed his heart by less than an inch. Doctors said he was lucky to be alive. Maria waited through the night. She refused to leave the hospital. Jason eventually stabilized, but the question remained: who would do this? Detectives arrived at the hospital to take Maria's statement. Her description of the attacker was vague, but she remembered his build, his movements, and that moment she tore off part of his mask. The mask fragment was collected and sent for DNA analysis. A few days later, there was a hit: Marco Bentley, a 42-year-old private security contractor with a history of using excessive force. Marco was more than just any bodyguard. He had worked for the Romano family for over 15 years. He was Leonard's trusted fixer. Detectives brought Marco in for questioning. He claimed he hadn't seen Jason in months, but his alibi didn't check out. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the crime scene showed his SUV just 20 minutes before the attack. Detectives obtained a warrant to search Marco's phone and financial records. What they found blew the case wide open. In the weeks leading up to the attack, Marco had received 2 separate payments from an offshore account tied to a shell corporation. That shell corporation had Leonard Romano listed as a founding member. Investigators also found a chilling email exchange between Leonard and Marco. Leonard had written, "He needs to learn. Take care of it. No fatalities." Just a message. When Leonard was brought in for questioning, he was calm, cold. He denied knowing anything about the attack and claimed the payments were for consulting services. But the forensic evidence, financial trail, and Marco's eventual confession painted a damning picture. Marco admitted it. Leonard had paid him $10,000 to scare Jason and intimidate Maria. But when Jason fought back, things escalated. "He told me not to kill him, just to make sure he wouldn't show his face again," Marco said. But the kid wouldn't stop fighting. It was self-defense. The police disagreed. Leonard Romano was arrested for conspiracy to commit aggravated battery, solicitation of assault, and obstruction of justice. The trial of Leonard Romano began in the spring of 2020. Courtrooms were packed with reporters, friends, and curious locals. The idea that a wealthy father would orchestrate a hit on his own son was almost too shocking to believe. Leonard's defense team tried to spin the narrative. They painted him as a concerned father who was trying to protect his son from what he believed was a dangerous relationship. But the prosecution had the evidence: emails, phone records, financial documents, and Marco's full confession. Jason took the stand. The court watched in silence as he described the emotional toll of being rejected by his father. He choked up when describing how Maria had saved his life. Maria's testimony was heartbreaking. She recounted the attack in detail, breaking down as she recalled Jason's blood on her hands. He didn't just try to scare Jason. He tried to erase him. "And all because of me," she said through tears. In September 2020, Leonard Romano was found guilty on all charges. The judge called the case a grotesque misuse of power, pride, and control. Leonard was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Marco Bentley received a 10-year sentence with eligibility for parole after 6. The aftermath was a mix of healing and activism. Jason and Maria stayed together. After the trial, they moved to California, where Jason started a nonprofit called Echoes of Control, dedicated to supporting victims of family-based violence and coercion. Maria graduated nursing school and began working in trauma care. Her experience during the attack led her to specialize in emergency response and crisis intervention. Jason, now estranged from his father and the rest of the Romano family, published a memoir titled Strings of Silence, detailing his experience and the pain of choosing love over legacy. In an unexpected act of closure, Jason wrote a letter to his father 1 year after the sentencing. "You taught me everything about power, but Maria taught me everything about love. I hope you remember that when you're alone in your cell. Sometimes, the greatest threats come from within. In the case of Jason Romano, it wasn't a stranger in the dark that almost killed him. It was the man who raised him." This case reminds us that love defies status, and that true loyalty often comes from those we least expect. In a world driven by appearances and social class, the Romano case forces us to look beyond wealth and ask, what is the cost of pride? In the end, it wasn't wealth, power, or blood ties that saved Jason. It was Maria. Her courage, compassion, and strength turned tragedy into triumph. If this story moved you, share it. The more eyes on the truth, the harder it becomes to bury. And if you're drawn to the cases that linger, the ones that haunt timelines and twist in the dark, you're exactly where you belong. Hit subscribe, stay curious, and let's keep unraveling the truth